think we all know, and this is why we struggle with it, sustainability is a lot more than just no waste. So think about it if it were you, or think about how we think about it at Interface. Waste is a big part of it, but if you all went home tonight, and assuming you could resolve, and you pledged to become no waste people, assuming you could resolve the biological waste issue, which I'm not going to get into, think about what it means to be a no-waste person, right? You recycle everything, you're no longer engaging in a big part of consumerism and consumption. That still doesn't really mean you're leading a sustainable lifestyle, right? So you know, and when we began to think about sustainability interface, it became apparent waste was where we started, but it's about energy, it's about human relationships. So short answer, no way, it's much bigger than that.
Let's go to you. Let's go to you, Greg Janasek from Redworks.
Yeah, I think the question is a little too simplistic. It's not yes or no. To have sustainability, you need two things. You need both conservation, which is very important, as well as replenishment. Right? If you have a glass that's leaking, and it will eventually dry up unless you're replenishing. Which is why, to your point earlier, Jay, I'd love to see more of a focus on sustainable energy. Because at the end of the day, 70 years from now, we're all going to be wondering how we're heating our homes and fueling our cars.
Anthony Holm from Patriot Group, weigh in on this no waste thing.
First, thank you. Thank you for having me. Thank all of you for attending. Second, I'm just almost flabbergasted. I thought I was going to be the one who gave the opinion that everyone hissed at, and I'm amazed that it's basically no, and the third no. My concern with it primarily is there's no standardization in the sustainability. I mean, what does it mean? We all have a different objective, or definition rather. It's rather subjective. And the fact of no waste, what is no waste? But generally, if I generally accept the standards, I don't know.
Philip Winterberg from Rivet, our resident mathematician, our ulti-geek, waste or no?
Definitely not. So obviously, same as my other panelists have said, this is more of a holistic problem that you need to look at. It's not as simple as waste or no waste. It's exacerbated when you look at the growth in population and the rise of middle class in previously underdeveloped countries. Consumption around the world is going up geometrically. So that just exacerbates this consumption issue.
There we go. Okay, let's go on to Anthony Holm and Aaron Mizan. A question for you. Let's start an argument, Aaron and Anthony. Anthony, you're the unrecovered lawyer here, but as I found out earlier, Aaron is also a lawyer, although she's recovered. She's recovered. Can you tell us why Aaron Mizan, Anthony, can you tell us why Aaron Mizan's company, Interface Groups, and their Mission Zero is an unrealistic example for regulators and most companies? And then, Aaron, can you tell Anthony why he's wrong?
All right, first, is everyone familiar with Mission Zero? Yes? Anybody? Aaron, do you want to do a quick thumbnail?
Sure. I mean, it's a summary that our company has pledged to have zero environmental impact and to be a restorative enterprise by the year 2020.
So now I'm attacking that. Let's call it what it is. So again, what does that mean? What is zero? We all perhaps would have a different definition of zero, but the question that I was given was relative to regulators. How does one regulate that? How does an elected body or an appointed body go out and regulate that in corporate America? Again, what is zero, and how do you force a business entity to comply with that if and when you define it? And then two, what was the second part? Is regulatory and?
Regulatory, it's unrealistic, an unrealistic example for regulators and for
businesses. So they clearly believe they have a model that may be able to achieve that. But is it pragmatic and rational to believe, A, that we can apply that same model to any other business and or industry in America, or perhaps globally? And then B, can we do it while not eroding employment, or not eroding or increasing commodity prices of the goods created, or fill in the blank for any other thing that would be so devastating and harmful to us as consumers that it would be stopped or blocked as a regulatory action?
So Aaron, take Anthony on there, but also as you're doing it, can you give a little bit more background about Ray Anderson and
Sure.
a little bit about the history of Interface?
Sure. And I think the one thing to think about, and what I was thinking about when you were talking, is really, for us, if it exists, it must be possible, right? So we're going to spend the energy and the goodwill will and the focus of our company trying to achieve that. We don't think it's unrealistic. We actually think it's the only option. But in order to sort of get on the same page with us, you've got to buy into the fact and you've got to understand that the conventional business model that we have isn't working. And it's not going to get us to a sustainable world. So the take, make, waste model for most businesses is fundamentally not sustainable. Not sustainable from a resource base on the planet, not sustainable from an enrichment of our people. It just doesn't work. And so how do you counter that? How do you get out of that system? You don't do it with incremental goals, and you can't regulate your way out. You actually have to define a new system. So for us, it was defining a sustainable company, and we encapsulate that in this concept of Mission Zero. And it really is a bold, aspirational thing. It's to say we're going to fundamentally think about how we change the system of business and try to do it differently. And we've been successful doing it. We've seen huge reductions in our footprint. We've made money doing it. We've sort of increased the enthusiasm and the connection of the employees in our factories across the world in a way that you would not even believe. These are people who make carpet. And we've been able to retain people because they don't feel like they're just making carpet. They feel like they have a higher mission. So, I mean, not only do I think it's not unrealistic, I think it's the only way to go. And I think more companies need to get their own Mission Zero. And I think if we rely on the regulators of the world to sort of address what we're doing, we're in big trouble.
Interesting. Here we go. All cheerleaders are up here swinging their pom-poms. But the reality is what Interface has done, just for clarity here, what Interface has done is nothing less than change carpet from a product business to a service business. Imagine that. That's something that's a very, very interesting transformation. So, and a model that we might want to think about as we go through the rest of this panel. Okay, let's pair up Greg Janicek and Philip Winterburn here. Let's let the propeller heads loose, the supply chain guy and the technologist. Greg, since you represent the enabling technology for the world's supply chain cops, and Philip, since you're the architect of the systems that let companies know how good or bad their environmental impact and financial impact really is, we have the same question for both of you. What is the goal of all this transparency anyway? Is it to save money, seduce customers and investors, or just is it an exercise in futility, a bridge to nowhere? Let's start with you, Greg Janicek.
Well, it's not to make money. I think as you mentioned in your intro, that only 3% of investments are for sustainable companies, right? So, I mean, a lot of young people in this room, it's great. Everyone who's young should be idealistic sometime in your life. But the reality is, as you get older in your experience, what people make decisions is money. It's the bottom line. What makes companies make decisions who are run by people is money. And I was reading the comments and blogs to this panel yesterday, and everyone mentioned it's about time companies do X or companies do Y. We're the company, right? We make up the companies that we work for. We lead the companies that we work for. And companies make decisions based on return on investment. But there are a lot of great intentions in there, right? So I lived in Seattle 4.5 years. More Subarus and Priuses in Seattle than anywhere, right? Everyone's environmentally conscious. But the reality is, every weekend, those Subarus and Priuses are driving 100-mile round trips out to the mountains to go hiking or camping or backpacking or what have you. Okay, yeah, it's great that they're driving those cars, but it'd be better if they went to the park by their house and didn't drive a 120-mile round trip. They bought those cars because they want to save money on gas and expenses. So I believe until companies are forced to do the same thing, it could be naturally occurring with the cost of energy prices. It could be legislated with taxes. It's not going to happen. So I'm a firm believer that at some point, as energy prices go up, people will conserve more.
Philip Winterburn, Rivet Software is responsible for as much transparency making as any company has ever been responsible for. What's the goal of all this transparency anyway?
So first of all, let's talk about what transparency is. We have terabytes, petabytes of data floating around, and a lot of that data is openly available, but that doesn't mean that we're being transparent. There's a difference between data and information or knowledge. So the primary goal with transparency is to show